So when we're talking about living on purpose, right? That's purpose is our favorite topic of Women of Purpose. And so purpose is what something is designed specifically and created for. So we believe at Women of Purpose that every single person has a divine assignment. They have a divine purpose. And that purpose, we believe, is given by God. And so we believe as you grow in your relationship with the Lord, and just as you grow and mature, that you will even learn more about what your purpose is and what you are called to do. And so we believe that we help women, we give them tools necessary and teaching necessary to help develop that. Some of you may be in the process of, oh, well, I know my purpose, but maybe you need to develop it more. And we help with that. Or some of you may be like, I need to find out where I can volunteer or where I can help or where are the best places for me to grow in my area of expertise. And we're here to help with that. And so through these virtual brunches and sessions, these webinars that we have, we believe that we are teaching you how to do those things. And so over the past or over the next couple of months, we're going to talk about our core values, what Women of Purpose believes, like our core team, what we believe, what we live by. And so the first one we're going to talk about today is how to live authentically. And so on our agenda, what we're going to talk about is what is authenticity? Who are you? What are the authenticity blockers that try to stop us? And then the challenge. So if you know me, we're always going to have a challenge because I believe that we should not just hear and learn, but we should actually apply. What is the use of having a bookshelf full of books if you never put them into action? If you don't take the principles that you've learned and put them into action? So we will always challenge you to be the best you because people are relying on you. Our communities, our families are relying on us to be our best, to be the best you. So let's start off first with what is the definition of authenticity? So to be authentic means worthy of acceptance or belief as conforming to or based on a fact, made or done the same was or as the original. Not a false imitation though, true to one's own personality, spirit, and character. This is how Merriam-Webster defines authenticity or being authentic. So we believe that being authentic, or I keep messing up that word, being authentic, right, means that you are true to yourself, true to your spirit, that it's actually based on facts, that being authentic is based on facts. So you may say, well, how can I be authentic based on facts? Well, being authentic based on facts means that we believe what the word says about us. We believe that he created us in his image. We believe that we are more than conquerors. So, first and foremost, we believe the word of God. And to us, that is factual information. So, when you're being true to yourself, you're saying to God, I believe in the facts of how you've made me. I believe the facts and how you've created me. And so that's how I will live. I will live in a place of authenticity, right? Not false or an imitation of something else. So, like me, or I'm sure that many of you, you're on social media, whether that's Facebook or whether that's Instagram. We all have some type of connections or Twitter, or there's so many different platforms. We follow people, right? We follow their pictures, we follow their images, we look at their lives, and then we decide if we like it. We decide by thumbs up or we give them a thumbs down. If we're angry, we confirm that we're angry with those posts. And some of us actually type in the post and we give our opinions. But sometimes those pictures that we see could be false images. And let me explain how. It's so funny. I just saw a post of a family. They posted all these amazing pictures and they look amazing. They look great. They look like their family is all together. They have three kids. The mom is pregnant with a child right now, and they have these three little ones, and it looks like a picture perfect family, right? And so you can look at that and be like, oh my goodness, this is so great. I wish I had that, right? You can want that. What's so funny, 2 days later, they did another, picture, and they showed the behind the scenes of taking those pictures. They showed the craziness with trying to get the kids together. They showed, "Oh my goodness, this isn't right," or "This isn't right." So then they showed a real depiction of what that picture really was. And so sometimes I believe as women, that we may look at magazines, or we may look at YouTube videos, or we may look at people speaking or teaching, or people doing the things that we want to do. And then we may think that they have it all together and that we want to be like that. But there's a lot that goes into that, right? And so when I saw that secondary post that that person had posted, and they showed the behind the scenes, there's always behind the scenes things that are going on. So when we try to mirror ourselves and not live authentically based on someone else's image, right? It's false. It's not real, right? So we believe that being authentic, being your true self, is believing the fact of what God says about you, not using false imitations of someone else, right? And making sure that we're true to our own spirits. So the first question I think we need to ask is, who are you? Right? To be authentic, you have to know the facts about yourself. You have to know who you are. You have to know where you came from and your purpose. And some of you may say, well, Lakita, I don't know my purpose yet. And that's okay. It's okay. Some things are just ever evolving. I would tell you in my life right now at 46, I know what my purpose is, but it's still evolving. It's still going to a different scale as my relationship with the Lord continues to grow. As I continue to step out on faith, as I continue to do things, right? I learn more about what I'm called to do, right? And my purpose and how it impacts those around me. So let's start here first. This is my story. I just want to share a little bit about my background and to kind of talk about being and living authentic. I got to tell you a little bit about me. I asked you who you are. So let's talk a little bit about me. So these are just some pictures of me and my parents. There's Roberta Buchanan, Larry Buchanan, and this is me at a young age. And I would tell you, I'm thankful for being raised by both of my parents, and they were great. They loved me, they encouraged me, and they supported me. But I will tell you, though, that I still struggled with self esteem. I still struggled in knowing who I was. Some of you may think, well, looking at these pictures, you look so happy, except for that picture on the right where my hair is like standing up on the top of my head. And I think everyone has a childhood picture like that. Would you agree? And so I just look at this little girl now and I'm like, I remember how I felt in different places of my life. And so you would think, well, you're the only child, right? Weren't you spoiled? Didn't you get what you want? My parents were great parents. So I was spoiled, but I wasn't spoiled rotten. But still, along with that came a little bit of isolation, right? There was isolation that was felt. And there were times, sometimes with other parts of my family, that I didn't feel connected right away, right? There were times actually in high school where I didn't feel connected. I had friends, right? And on the outward, it would appear as though everything was good. But then I struggled a lot with my self esteem. Being at a young age, on the picture all the way to the right with that red turtleneck on, I used to get teased a lot about my forehead, right? Kids used to call me a name called the Brickster, and they said that my forehead was really big. And so I had some self-esteem issues with how I looked. I was just always cautious, right, about how my forehead looked or how my face looked. And I don't know if any of you have ever walked through situations where you were cautious about how you looked or you were cautious about how you acted. Another thing was I grew up in a church home. My parents, we went to church, right? And I'm so glad for that upbringing. But we went to church 2 to 3 times a week. And so we were constantly in service. But I will tell you, even though my body was there, I wasn't truly there spiritually. I didn't really get to know the Lord until probably I was around the age of 18, when I accepted Jesus as my personal savior, like the real time. When you're young, you decide to make those decisions because you're scared. So you do things out of fear. But so I wasn't always confident. in the things that I did. Now, I did get lots of opportunities to speak, and I did do that, right? And so people say, "Well, you seem like you were outgoing," and I would say I'm naturally outgoing, but that does not mean that I didn't have struggles inside. So one of the things that I heard a lot growing up is Lakita talks too much. That was the biggest thing that I probably heard. So you could probably tell I like to talk. And so it was on my report cards, it was on progress reports. I've heard families say it. And of course, did I probably need to learn when to talk? When's the right time to talk? Yes. But hearing that over and over and over again, I internalized it as a negative and not as a positive. And so what happened was there were times where I would hold back or I felt like I wouldn't be myself because I didn't think I had anything valuable to share. That actually still kind of came up even in areas of where I was working. I remember I had this great opportunity of helping with a strategic plan for a nonprofit business several years ago, and they had invited me. And so it was their entire board. I wasn't on the board, but they wanted to hear what I had to say about different strategic initiatives that they were planning out for the next 3 years. And so I will tell you that low self-esteem that that little girl still was struggling with came up a lot, really heavy that day. I remember just sitting with these people that I thought were, oh my goodness, these people are so much smarter than me. These people have so much more money than me. These people have a better status than me. And at the time, I was the only African American there. So there were all these thoughts that were coming to me, right? They weren't necessarily factual thoughts of, okay, this should stop you from doing something, but they were thoughts that were just all in my head. And I remember saying to myself, Kita, you have to make a decision. You are at this table for a reason. So, what are you going to do? Are you going to be yourself or are you going to be silent? And since I had heard so many times, Lakita, you talk too much, right? And thinking in myself, that interpret, no one wants to hear you or what you have to say is not valuable. I almost shrunk back, like I almost let that consume me in that moment. But I decided to stand up and I was like, no, I'm going to speak up. No, what I have to say is valuable. And like my dad used to tell me all the time when I was little, Lakita, don't be intimidated by anyone. They put their pants on the same way you do, one leg at a time. So guess what I did? I stood up straight. I gave 110%. I gave insight. And let me tell you this too. Even while I was doing that, some people would say, oh, well, you were probably feeling good. No, even while I was doing it, I was still battling in my head. Just be yourself, be yourself, just be yourself. I was still battling with that in my head. And so I remember after we got done and the meeting was over, and when I walked away, I still felt like, wow, you know what I mean? I really belong in this place, right? Because I felt like I didn't belong. I didn't have anything of value to share, even though I gave my 110%. And I remember walking away, and I remember the person at the head of that time came to me and they thanked me for being there. And they said this, we want you to sit at this table. Wow, right? Wow. What I did was I pressed forward no matter how I felt or no matter how those negative thoughts about I'm less than or that I'm not enough or that I'm not smart enough or I'm not rich enough or I'm not, all of those things kind of went out. Then it was a true picture. It was like, oh my goodness, I don't have to believe the lie that I'm not enough. I don't have to believe the lie that I'm too much. I just have to be who I was created to be. So I encourage you today, be who God has created you to be. When you hold back, when you subdue yourself, people, our communities will miss out on who you truly are. You're a gift designated for this time. Designated, like we are all not here just by chance. This is on purpose why you're attending this brunch. It's on purpose why you are living at this time. It's on purpose where you work, the place that you work, or the nonprofit that you're associated with. It's all on purpose. So rise up and be you. Don't limit yourself based on negative thoughts. Don't limit yourself based on things that aren't even factual, right? Remember, I talked about authenticity is based on factual information, right? So for me to say I'm not enough is not factual. For me to say I'm not smart enough, that is not factual. So for you, if you're feeling like you're not good enough, that's not factual. It's not factual based on God, on what He says. When He places you in a situation or He places you in an opportunity, He's doing it because He knows that He's giving you everything you need to conquer that situation. So guess what? In those times, you are absolutely enough. Actually, you're more than enough, right? God is giving you His strength. He's giving you His wisdom and His direction. So when I'm talking about my story and how I've struggled in certain areas, I want to encourage you that God gave me the ability to overcome those and still continue to overcome. Because let's just be serious. We all will still have opportunities where those lies will pop up. But what I'm trying to say is, I just don't want you to live in that space, right? It's something when a thought comes, yeah, it can come, but let's not make that who we are, okay? And so I believe that as you continue on this journey of discovering and knowing who you are, you will be able to fulfill the things that God has for you unhindered, right? Not letting it control you or not letting it to distract you. So, what are the authenticity blockers that I've identified in life? Here they are. The first one is low self esteem, right? We know that that's a blocker from being who you truly are. So, if you have low self esteem and you think low of yourself, then you won't give 120%, right? You won't be your true self or true reflection of yourself because you're not positive. You don't even think good about yourself. And so, where does that low self esteem come from, right? Sometimes it can come from situations that we've experienced, whether it was traumatic experiences, right? If you've walked through any type of abuse, right? Low self esteem is almost like prevalent, knocking at your door, right? And I believe those are ways that the enemy tries to at a young age that tries to like diminish the light and the hope that God has planted in us. But we know that our God is more than able to heal. He's more than able to make us whole. So even in those, if you've experienced traumatic situations or emotional or physical situations, God is a master healer. He has a way, and I don't know how. I don't understand it all, but He has a way of healing the worst wounds. He does. And to restore us so that we know that we have value and we have worth. Some of us, maybe it wasn't a traumatic experience, but maybe it was just words that were spoken over you. Maybe you've heard people say negative comments or negative remarks to you constantly in your life. And so you've had to live with those words. And so you hear them constantly. And so you believe that's actually a part of you now. And so you have to be really careful with that. Because if you start to believe those lies, you'll actually speak those lies and you speak those lies. And that's kind of what your life will look like. So if you're battling with low self-esteem, right? I get it. I've been there, right? And like I said before, it's not that these things will all totally go away. But what you do is you learn how to not let it control you. And then you learn what are your triggers? What things trigger low self-esteem comments or thoughts to come to your mind, right? And as you're growing, you learn, okay, that's a trigger, right? And then you take that fact from the word of God. Oh no, I'm more than a conqueror, right? So you're settling it and you're using the word of God to do that. The next one is comparison. Oh my goodness. This is a definite Blocker. So if you have ever compared yourself, I just want you to put that in the chat. Yep, I've done it before, right? I know I have. I've compared myself, right, in different ways, right? I still remember being in elementary school. Guys, this is how thoughts, right? You remember stuff, right? I still remember being in elementary school and we got our report cards. And I remember there was this young girl in our class and she was so smart. Her name was Becky. I remember her first name. And I remember someone making the remark, why can't your grades be like Becky's? Wow, right? A kid hearing that kind of stuff, again, right? Seeds planted early on in life. And I remember like feeling that. I mean, I can still remember what that felt like even then. And I remember thinking like, oh, I have to now be like her, right? To get the results that she has, I have to be like her, right? I could have just said, hey, Kita, you got to work harder to get better grades. But no, I'm like, I need to be like her. And so sometimes we may look at people, even as adults, right? We may look at people and say, okay, these are the things that they're doing. I need to emulate or I need to be like that, right? And it's not like we need to be like someone else because you need to be you, right? What we can do is respect and honor and want to emulate people's tenacity, right? Or their characteristic, like their character traits, like that they're honest, that they're humble, that they're loving, that they're supportive, that they're great leaders, or we can learn from that and desire that and work towards that, but not to be like the other person, not to be. God never created us to be like someone else. If you look at all of your hands, right? You have these different fingerprints. No one has the same fingerprints. We were designed to be different, right? But comparison is a way of stopping us from being authentic because then we will try to be like someone else. And the last one that I think is a blocker is people pleasing, right? I don't know if you've been there. I've been there, right? I'm being honest and transparent with you guys. So hopefully you're doing the same thing. So if you've had an issue with trying to please people, say in the chat, yeah, that's been me before too. So this area is when we will desperately try to do things for the satisfaction of others, right? We want to live up to other people's expectations. And that's a dangerous place. It's dangerous because it's exhausting, right? Again, it's not allowing you to be your true self, but then it's also exhausting. You're not being true to yourself. Remember when we talked about being authentic, you're being true to your spirit, right? The facts of how God made you. Well, if you're trying to please people by trying to do what their expectations are of you, you most likely will fail. It will a lot of times it will actually be really, really hard. And so working to please people, doing what they want to do is dangerous. It's so dangerous, right? And I've learned, or even continuing to learn, who we should focus to please is God, right? Focus to please him and not looking to please others. So those are the three blockers that I truly believe that sometimes we will have a hard time with. It's low self-esteem, comparison, and people pleasing. So here's the challenge. Who's ready? This is the challenge. We're getting ready. Now, you need to either write this down or you need to get your notes out, your notepad, whatever you're using, or if it's your phone and you're putting in your iPhone, your Apple, and you're doing notes, you got to do this part. So we talked about my story. We talked about, areas that I had a hard time in and still that I'm constantly learning and evolving and being better at that. So now it's time to the challenge. What do we have to do? So remember, I said earlier, it is not important to just listen and to learn and to gain understanding. It's also important to put it into practice, right? We have to practice over and over and over again. We have to practice having good characteristic traits. We have to practice being humble. We have to practice being honest. We will have situations and that will come to us that will help us to practice, right? And so it's important that when we see a challenge, we're like, okay, Gotcha. I'm going to do this. So let's start. The first one is this. So we're trying to confront those authenticity blockers, right? We're trying to be the best person that you can be. And the first thing that you need to do is you got to think new. Number one, you got to think new. So I have God confidence here versus self confidence, right? So in our culture today, they would tell you to have self confidence. They will tell you how to build yourself up with self confidence. They'll tell you all the things that you should say to yourself in the mirror. They will tell you that in order to build self confidence, you need to conquer and you need to have goals met, or you need to have this kind of job, right? This will help build your self confidence. Sometimes they even actually tell you to kind of live bold and be bold, and this will help you, right? Now, I'm not saying that all of those things are wrong, but what I am saying is that you should focus on God confidence. God confidence is different than self confidence. Self confidence is, I believe I can do it. I believe I can change all things. I believe right? But God confidence says, God, I can't do anything without you. God, I can't make it through the next trial or situation without you. God, I can't live without you. God, my confidence and my trust is I'm putting it all on you, right? God, I have confidence that I will overcome the way that I think about myself, that I will treat myself better. God, I have confidence that you'll teach me how to see myself. God, that you'll teach me how to see my life. You'll teach me how to see obstacles in a different way. God, I trust that you will help to give me your view, that I will think your thoughts, not my selfish thoughts, not my selfish desires, but God, yours. I will tell you that is something that you practice every day. That's not something that just happens like, whoo, I got God confidence and that's it. No, I will tell you, situation, trial, situation, and trials will help you to develop that more and more and more. Because once you conquer one thing in life, there may be something else that you need to conquer. But what happens is your faith and your confidence in God grows substantially over and over and over and over when you decide to put your trust in Him. So you have to think new. So it can't just be about self confidence, it's God confidence. Now, there is some element in there that, you know, how self confidence says, believe in yourself. Yes, you believe in yourself, but you're believing in yourself because of what God has given you, right? So I can say to myself, I believe I'm a good leader, not just because I make that up. No, I believe that because that's what He's called me to do. And that's what I'm practicing and that's what I'm working on. Right. So you see how the source I know is God, right? So God gets all the glory, He gets all the honor versus self. Because if we do things out of selfish desire, we won't win, right? And people will be able to see that. There are so many people that have struggled with being authentic because they were trying to muster up something within themselves and they needed the root or the source of that to be back to God. So, God confidence and not self confidence. So, cloudy vision will distort your perspective. I shared with a group a couple of weeks ago. My dad had cataracts, and so when you have cataracts, you have like a distorted kind of vision, and so the process or the surgery that he got, he now has perfect vision. He's got like 20/20 vision. I'm like, oh, that's not fair. He doesn't have to wear glasses, and I'm still wearing contacts, right? So he had to get those cataracts removed, surgically removed, in order to have better vision. And so, in order to think right, we have to have a better perspective of things. We have to look at things different. In order to be authentic, you have to look with a view. And I talked about this earlier about having a view from like having God's point of view. When you look at things from a negative light or just from your selfish light, right? How you see things, you will have a distorted perspective. So you've got to change your perspective. You have to ask God, okay, what are the things or the filters in my life, right? Because we have filters, and our filters could be through hurt or it could be through pain. or what we know and what we don't know. We all have these filters. So when a situation happens, it's like it's processed through this filter, right? And many times it can be distorted. We may think something's happening. We may think someone's not liking us, or we may think someone's treating us bad. And really, it's not. It's just our perspective and how we're looking at it. So, how do you change your thinking? Through the Word of God, through renewing your mind, finding out what does God say about you? What does God say about others? So that you can actually have a better perspective on others too. Sometimes, we have a poor perspective on how we see our neighbor or how we see people who don't agree with us. We got to get our perspectives right. So remember, the first one, you got to think new. In order to be authentic, you have to think new about yourself, how you see others, have God confidence and not self-confidence. So I love this. God is responsible for making things work. I'm responsible for being obedient, right? So that's you. God is responsible for making things work in your life, but you are responsible for being obedient. You're responsible for if he says, hey, I've called you or I want you to do this, I've purposed for you to do this, act on it, right? He's going to make it happen. He's going to make sure that all the dots connect and the right resources come in place, but he needs you to be obedient and to walk in obedience. I love this quote by Craig Rochelle. It says, decisions determine direction and direction determines destiny. So how you think, the decisions that you make will determine your direction, and then your direction will ultimately determine your destiny, right? So fulfilling your purpose starts with changing the way you think, right? In order for you to clearly walk in a specific path and in order for you to have an amazing destiny that God already has planned for you, right? We just need to be obedient and walk in it. So what is the next thing you need to do? Okay, this is key. We need to focus. You need to focus on your strengths. That's right. Focus on your strengths. This verse in Psalms 139 says this, certainly you made my mind and heart. You wove me together in my mother's womb. I will give you thanks because your deeds are awesome and amazing. You knew me thoroughly, right? Okay, so this is what God is saying about you. He's saying this again, you wove me together in my mother's womb, right? So God is the one who put together your personality and your purpose. He's doing that, right? It's not just your parents that got together, right? God's in this process, right? He knew your purpose even before your parents got together, right? He knew that he needed you for this specific time. He knew that he needed you to be here and to make this impact in the world, right? In your community. So he said, I wove you together specifically. I created you on purpose. It's with great detail that God has crafted you. It's with great detail. That's why you should live out loud and be yourself, because he used great detail to put you together. And he's got this amazing purpose for you. And the only thing we have to do is just know it, seek him to find out what it is, and be obedient. And he says this in verse 14, I will give you thanks because your deeds are awesome and amazing. You knew me thoroughly. So we should be giving God praise and honor for, oh, you make amazing things. You make amazing people. That's you. You were created amazingly, right? And one of the things that I think we forget is the things that God has given us, the gifts that God has given us. Sometimes we can do them with our eyes closed, right? So we don't think of them as gifts. We're like, oh, well, that's what I do, right? No, that is a gift, right? It's a gift. So capitalize, and I don't mean capitalize, make money, but I mean capitalize on you build your strength. You continue to grow in that area. You say, where has God, what area or what part of my purpose does he want me to continue to build up and to grow in? I mean, throw everything at that, right? Get really good at that. If it is leading, get really good at leading. If it's singing, if it's writing, if it is hospitality, if it is hosting and just helping people, get so good at it and throw 110% in it. focus and build on your strengths. The opposite of that is sometimes we will focus more on the things, the areas that we're not good at, right? And then we'll limit ourselves. We're like, well, I'm not good at this, so I'm going to limit myself. No, there is no limit to what God will do when we are obedient. Remember that. There is no limits when we walk in obedience to our purpose. There's nothing that can stop it. When we are obedient to God, there's nothing that can stop it. There is no person that can stop it. And even if it looks like there's an obstacle or there's an issue that is coming at you, I will tell you, you will still win with God on your side. You will still win with God on your side. So focus on your strengths. I'll give you a practical story of not to focus on your areas of weakness. So I love singing. I love music, and I've always wanted to sing. One of my friends talks about, we wish that we could sing, and we try to sing sometime, and we both don't sound good at all trying to do it. But we're like, oh, we wish we could sing. And so I teach and I preach, and sometimes at churches, the speaker, before they get ready to do their message, they will sing a song, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, and goes back to comparison, right? Like I need to do that. That's what they're doing. I should do that, right? And so I remember deciding, okay, I'm going to sing. And I told my husband, I was like, hey, can you play for me? Teach me how to sing this song. And I sung this song before I had to preach, right? And I was so excited. I was so excited. And I think I did well. And then I remember having an engagement and having to preach again. And I told my husband, I was like, oh, okay, I want to do another song. And you know what he tells me? It's so funny. He goes, I think you should just focus on the teaching and the preaching, right? So there was an area that I had compared myself to other people that I wanted to do, right? But it wasn't a strength of mine. So I was trying to take energy and effort and put in an area that God didn't call me to do. So what do? I just love it when other people sing, and I will stick to what God has called me to do. And that's with anything. So focus on your strengths. Build upon your strengths. This is how you can be authentic, right? Because you're saying the gifts that God has given me, I appreciate them. They're amazing, and they may look different than someone else's, but I'm going to build upon that. I'm going to focus on that. The next one is invest in yourself. As women, I think that this can be a challenging area for all of us. And the reason why is we're just life givers, just automatically, right? We serve and we help and we take care of our families, whether that's, if you have a family, whether that's your immediate family, or maybe you haven't started a family of your own yet. It's maybe your parents and you're taking care of them, or maybe you're taking care of others in some type of capacity. And so we have this nurturing, I do believe this nurturing gift that's inside of many of us. But sometimes what happens is we find ourselves investing more in others than we do in ourselves. And so I think that we do a disservice when we don't intentionally try to grow on purpose. We do a disservice. If we're constantly looking at how to invest in others and we're leaving ourselves out, we're not building ourselves to become stronger. We're not building ourselves to become better. So here's just a couple of tips. Grow on purpose. So you have to be intentional on growing, right? So remember I talked about those strengths earlier, develop them even more, right? So if yours is speaking, maybe you need to get in a speaking program. Maybe you need to read books on that. If it's leadership, get as many leadership books as you can, right? Search out the Bible where it talks about how people led in different places and the ways that they've messed up and the ways they did well, right? Maybe it's your family and you're like, I'm so called to my family. And let me tell you this, if you have a family, right, and you have children or a spouse, or you're getting ready to get married, that is an important calling as well. Don't think that you have to do something grand and big to be like, well, that's not, my purpose has to be something grand and big, right? our purpose is what he's called us to do. So if it's called to raise a family, we do that 120%. If it's called to lead an organization, we do that 120%. If it's called to be in government, that's 120%. Wherever he's called us, right? And then we don't compare ourselves with each other saying, well, that one's better and that one's not. No, it's what he's called us to do and what he's equipped us to do. So make sure that you're investing in yourself. This one, dedicate non-negotiable time to self-development. I would encourage you to do this. So that is basically just saying, okay, hey, this time during the week or this time during the day, I'm looking to help build myself, whether that is listening to a podcast, right? Or like listening to these webinars, or whether that's listening to a sermon, or whether that's reading a book that's going to help you and strengthen you in a certain area. Make sure you do take that time to do that. They always say when you're on an airplane, right, that you should put your oxygen mask on first before you put the other person's on. And the reason why is because you can't save anyone if you can't breathe. So you need to make sure that you're breathing. You need to make sure that you're doing well and that you're whole. I know some people say, they're running on E or their cup is empty. I don't believe God wants us to help others and love others or minister to others on E with an empty cup. I think he wants us to constantly be full in him, right? Constantly be full in him so that we can pour out and share to others. So I just said that about the airplanes. In order to invest in others, you must invest in yourself first. All right. So we are almost to the end. So you need to be the best you. And I believe that if we tackle and we look at those blockers or those triggers or those areas and identify, okay, is it low self-esteem, God? Ask yourself those questions. Am I battling with low self-esteem? Am I battling with comparison? Am I comparing myself to friends or to others, right? And am I trying to please people? Identify that and then fix it, right? We gave 3 principles on what you can do, right? We said the first one is that you need to think right? So you got to think new, focus on your strengths, and invest in yourself. That will help you be the best you. Here's the important thing. There's always a why for why you have to do something, why you do this or why you do that. And people ask, why was I created? And this is why it is important that you be the best you, and why you need to live authentically. It's this. 1 Peter 4:10 says, just as each one has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of the varied grace of God. So why do you have to live authentically? Why do you have to be your true self? Why do you have to be the best you can be? Is because we have to serve one another. And it shows that we're being good stewards. So let's read that one more time. Just as each one has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of the varied grace of God. Yay. So as you're going on this journey to be authentic, just remember, don't beat yourself up if a day you're like, oh, this day didn't work out too well. Get back up and let's get started again. Don't let temporary pauses stop you from having traction, right? Don't let that stop you. Just get back up. If you're having a hard time in a certain area, get a mentor. Make sure you have a good friend, someone that can really speak life into you, can tell you, hey, girlfriend, you need to get it right. You know what I mean? I think that that's important as we go along the way, that we have strong connections. We have strong people in our circle that will help us and tell us, girlfriend, you don't got it together, or girlfriend, you're doing good. There's something that I hear people talk about all the time. It says, go do you, boo, right? That's like a statement we've heard all the time. But I'm going to tell you, go be you. Go be you, what God has created in you. Walk in God confidence with your head up high, your shoulders back, knowing that he created you for a purpose and for a reason, and don't hold back. So I hope that you guys enjoyed that. We're going to go to some questions and answers in a little bit. So let me stop sharing here. But before we go to questions and answers, let me share this with you too. So if you're like, oh, this was life-giving, please share this. We will have this webinar up on our website so that you can go back and listen to, and you can share with others. Just want to share with you what's coming up soon. We're going to talk about how to honor one another in the month of June, and our speaker is going to be Shannon Lawson. And we have Walking in Integrity in August, and how to advocate for our communities. So Kimberly Helton is doing Walk in Integrity, and Jasmine Botero will be doing Advocate for our communities. So what we are going over, if you go to the Women of Purpose website, you will see that what I'm reviewing is these are our core values. This is what we are trying to live by. And those that we mentor. So we have a Women of Purpose mentoring program. And so we are teaching and leading women to follow these same core values. We believe if you follow these core values that you will definitely walk in your purpose. So let me look at some questions and answers here. Okay, let's see what we got. Let's see, we got anything in the chat? Oh, okay, I see one question. What do you do if none of the people around you encourage you to be authentic? Whew, that's a good question. So if anyone else has any questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A right down below. It says Q&A, put them there. So what do you do if none of the people around you encourage you to be authentic? So listen, this is a hard one, right? This is truly a hard one. Sometimes we don't always want to change our relationships when needed. Sometimes we do, right? If you are in a situation that it is toxic, right? And I'm talking about friendships. Let's make sure I talk about that first. So let's say we're in friendships with individuals that are toxic and they do not build you up, but they actually tear you down. Lots of times when that happens, it is, you can identify that there's something going on with that person, right? So most of the time, I'm a root cause kind of person. So I always want to know, what is the background to why someone is doing something, right? I don't just look at a situation and see someone acting a certain way and be like, oh, this person is that. I look to see and ask God, what is the root cause behind that? And so sometimes people that treat other people bad, or they have negative comments all the time, or the toxic thoughts or toxic talk, right? They are battling with something internally, right? And so sometimes I think as friends and you've had relationships with people, addressing that with the person is the first thing, right? Like, hey, you're constantly speaking negativity, or you're constantly tearing me down, right? I would appreciate if you wouldn't do that, right? Or however you talk to your friends. But I think that's ways that you can identify and try to correct that behavior. Now if that continues to go on, right, and you're not seeing that that's letting up at all, you may have to reevaluate that friendship and say, maybe in a season of time, it was good for us to be friends. But in this season where I'm going, maybe we're not going the same place. So there's nothing wrong with sometimes relationships, friendships having to depart, or even sometimes business relationships, if you're not going the same path or the same way. Just always do it in love and consideration and respect. And I think that is a way that you're investing in yourself, right? And that is a way possibly you could be investing in them, maybe giving those that true feedback, right? That hard feedback, because sometimes we need to do that. I think a lot of times we do a disservice by not being honest with people. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about hateful honesty. I'm talking about true honesty where you're doing it in love. And so I think that it's important in those relationships, if you find out in those friendships, if it's toxic and you can't do that, then you may have to look at moving in different directions. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if we're talking about relationships and it's a marriage, right? I would really strongly encourage you to seek counseling, seek marriage counseling, because sometimes you need a mediator, right? You need someone to kind of help you through those situations to make sure that you can get rid of that toxic talking and toxic thinking to each other. But even in those situations, right, you got to give 110%, work hard. Could still be hard at the beginning, right? Because, our behaviors sometimes don't just change overnight, but we give each other grace and pray that that people can change because they can. But and I'm talking about marital situations. Just make sure you seek out counseling and wisdom to help you in those situations. Okay, here's another one. Most of us have been people pleasers. What are some practical things we can do to de escalate our need to please others? Okay. So sometimes I think one of the ways we can do it is look to see if someone wants you to do something. I want you to actually ask yourself this question: is this something I should be doing? Yes or no? If it's something you shouldn't be doing, the answer is no, right? And so if the answer is no, is you then have to tell someone, hey, the answer, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this, right? So I see this sometimes a lot where I'm a busy kind of person and I can do, God's gifted me to be able to do lots of things, right? But I have to be careful with that because I can overbook myself. It's happened before. And so what happens is I'm always to that person, I can help, I'll do it, I can help, right? But you have to be careful that you're not trying to overly commit yourself. So here's a practical example. Someone says, hey, we want you to work in this group, and this is volunteerism I'm talking, and we need you to do this and this and this and this and this. And you're like, oh, but in your mind, hey, I don't have the time to do that, right? Or this isn't something that I know I should be doing. You should be okay to say, hey, no, now is not the time I can do it, but this person can, right? Or maybe they can find someone who could do it, right? So I think the power in saying no is needed for a lot of us, especially us, because we will try to take on, as women, most of the time we will try to take on more than what we can handle, right? Because we believe that we have to make people happy and we want everyone satisfied. And so we have to be careful that we are not overtaxing ourselves and over exerting ourselves to try to please other people. So ask yourself the question, should I do this, yes or no? And whatever the answer is, not based on what they want you to do, but based on it internally, asking yourself, if the answer is no, tell them no. And guess what? They will find someone else to do it. I've learned that. I've learned that. Any other questions? Let me see here. Okay, I see you in the chat. All right. All right, so if there are no other questions, we are so grateful that you guys were on today's um, virtual brunch with Women of Purpose, Living Authentically. We ask you to check out our website, go on About Us. You'll learn about our team, our amazing team, and the things that they're doing. You'll be able to get connected in some of the things that they are doing too, also. And you'll be able to see some events that are coming up. We're looking at having our Women of Purpose conference coming up soon. So we're so excited about that. More information is going to be shared. And you're going to hear about our mentees. We have a mentoring, a Women of Purpose, Pursuing Purpose mentoring program that is currently going on. And we're so excited about the group of women that are in that program. And you're going to hear from them in our conference later on this year. So listen, have a great week, right? Live authentically, be proud of who you are, be proud of who God's created you to be. Grow in areas and in your strengths, and be excited about what God has in store for you. We love you here at Women of Purpose, and we will see you on the next time. Bye-bye.